Hey Slayers, and yes, I'm capitalizing on my most popular video. I need views, I'm sorry. But anyway, today's video is about how the Sega Dreamcast could have succeeded. So, as you all know, I love the Sega Dreamcast. My favorite console of all time is the Sega Saturn. Also, if you're more interested in the history of the Dreamcast, go check out my video. You can see it on screen. That's not a clickable annotation, but go check out my video on Sega history about the Sega Dreamcast. So as you all know, the Sega Saturn is my favorite console of all time. She's my character theme, she's my channel theme, it's my favorite console, I talk about it all the time. But another one of my favorite consoles, not my favorite console, but another one of my favorites, and probably one of the most important Sega consoles of all time, is the Sega Dreamcast. Now, the Sega Dreamcast is infamous in the retro world for being underrated, having an unfair chance, and just all around being a great console in the retro world. Now, while I believe Sega improved a lot when it came to the Dreamcast, I also believe they still made some flaws. They still had some flaws. One of those flaws being the marketing. I don't think they marketed the Dreamcast enough. Also, yes, this is going to be done in like a top 10 style. I don't know how many there are. I'm just going to go until I run out. But number one, I guess you could say, I don't think they marketed the console enough. Like, I only see a few ads of Dreamcast. Like, I've only seen a few retro ads of Dreamcast, and there's only a couple of them out there. You can search them up on YouTube. I had the first one in my Sega History one, but I only remember seeing a few ads of Dreamcast. Well, I don't remember seeing them, but I remember on YouTube, I've only ever come across a few ads of the Sega Dreamcast, and that might just be because some of them have been lost to time, but then it might just be that some of them, Sega literally didn't just make enough, and that's how I feel. Sega just didn't make enough, at least in my opinion. The Dreamcast marketing could have been better. Number two, and this one is going to be a little bit controversial, maybe? I don't know. Number two, wait to release the Dreamcast. Now, I'm sorry to say this to anybody, because you may be thinking, oh, well, the Saturn was a flop, Sega had to hurry up and get rid of it. No, they didn't. It was a flop. Every console flops. Every person will have a console flop at some point. Oh, Nintendo didn't have a console flop. Virtual Boy. Nintendo Wii U. There's no company, Sony with the PlayStation 3, which came out on top of the Xbox 360 in the end, but got destroyed that generation, and me and a lot of other people consider the 360 as the winner of that generation. But anyway, every company will have that failed system. Microsoft with the Xbox One. Every company will have a failed system at one point or another. There's no getting around it. And the thing is, you're going to have to fight through that. Nintendo didn't abandon the Wii U halfway through, did they? Yes, they did. Never mind. Sony didn't abandon the PlayStation 3 halfway through, did they? No, they kept on fighting, and in the end, they turned the situation around. That is what Sega should have done. They should have rolled out the 90s and just... I took a couple more punches from the Saturn. I know it was hurting them financially and things, but it wasn't the time to me. I think what I actually think is, Sony, they should have waited just a little, at least till 2000 to release the Dreamcast. Like, they should have rolled the Saturn out a little bit instead of just like canceling it then and there like they did. So that's number two. Number three, even though they did not ride the Saturn out, the least thing they could have done is keep the Saturn on the market. Sega needed a little bit more brand appeal to me, and the Saturn should have been, I think a good idea. Now, this might not be a good idea, and you retro consoles collectors can scuff at me in the end, but I think Sega should have reduced the price of the Saturn, not to $99, but no, even down lower, $50. And I'm gonna explain to you why. Instead of them discontinuing the Saturn and making them look even worse in the retro world, what they should have done was drop the Saturn to $50 and call it a budget system. And let me explain to you why and how I think this could have worked. Because for the people who want a Dreamcast and can't afford the up-and-coming Dreamcast, or the people who just didn't have a Saturn in the first place, $50 is a nice entry point to the console. Like, $50 is just a cheap entry point into a console that I still believe had a lot of great games. And I think Sega should have kept the Saturn on the market. And another thing Sega should have done is, Sega should have dropped, and this is still a part of number 3, but Sega should have dropped support for any other console at that time. Sega also, in my opinion, should have stopped PC releases for a while, at least for a while, and just only focused on Dreamcast, and only focused, not on Saturn, but mostly only just focused on Dreamcast, which they kind of did in our timeline, but they were still releasing PC games. And even I think their arcade division should have calmed down some. I mean, by that point, arcade games were basically on their way out. Like, they weren't gone yet, but they were close to being on their way out. And I think Sega should have focused a little bit more on the Dreamcast than they did in our timeline. It's almost like they knew it was it, but they didn't know it was it. Number 3, I feel like Sega, what was I trying to say? I feel like Sega should have brought even more franchises back than what they did with the Dreamcast. Like, still, again, there was no Streets of Rage. I feel like Streets of Rage could have got people hyped for the console. Also, another decision I feel like Sega made that was pretty dumb, and this is gonna go straight into number 5. They should have had EA. They should have just agreed with EA and let EA be the sole publisher of sports games on the console. Now listen, I understand they just brought 2K, and I understand that they just had Visual Concepts, which it was 2K. It's 2K, but well, it was Visual Concepts at the time, but you know them as 2K Interactive now. But if you don't know what happened, Sega just had acquired Visual Concepts, Visual Concepts at the time, and what they did was EA came to them and said, hey, we're not going to support the Dreamcast if you don't make us the exclusive publisher for the console of sports games, which I think they should have done. Now listen, I'm not one to agree with Electronic Arts shady practices. They've been doing this since the Genesis, and they've tried to hold Sega ransom since the Genesis. But at the end of the day, they have the brand appeal, in my opinion, and I think Visual Concepts could have been put to use maybe in the arcade as like an arcade publisher, or even just sold off again. Because I'm not gonna lie, 2K made some great sports Dreamcast games, but EA, they were never gonna come close to the marketing appeal that EA had, and I think that's another big factor of why the PlayStation 2 was more popular than the Sega Dreamcast. So we're gonna move on to number 6. Number 6, don't discontinue the Dreamcast. Again, Sega, what they should have did was, I know they could have still went third party. I mean, let's be honest, Sega always made games for other people's consoles. Even from during the Genesis era, they were making games for the PC Engine and all that. I think while they could have went third party, but I also think they could have simultaneously still sold and made games for the Dreamcast. How can I explain this? Instead of discontinuing the whole console, I feel like they could have did a deal type thing like they did with the PC Engine and the Sega Genesis, and had games released for the PlayStation 2 but also come out on the Dreamcast, which I feel like they could have rolled the Dreamcast era out, in my opinion. So wait, we're gonna move on straight up to number 7 because I just thought about this. I think the Dreamcast should have received a midway upgrade. Now, back in the day, that might have been considered crazy, a crazy thing you just don't do. Most consoles that received upgrades either received a slim down, or I think Sega should have upgraded two editions. to the Dreamcast. I think there should have been a more powerful edition with graphics more on par to the PlayStation 2, and I think there should have been a the same powerful edition, the same edition as the normal one, but a slimmer edition to cut the price down for that one to $99, and that one, and have the more powerful one stay $199 and just discontinue the normal kind. Because let's be honest here, I feel like that could have got the Dreamcast. I feel like another big addition to the Dreamcast's failure to say is the Dreamcast didn't have the graphical capabilities that the PlayStation 2 had. Because as the PlayStation 2 came out later in 2000 and the Dreamcast came out in 1998, the PlayStation 2 ended up having the better graphics overall, and I feel like a lot of people went with that system instead. But this is number 9, right? Okay, yeah, number 9. DVD support. What do I mean by this? I feel like Sega should have released some peripheral of some kind to have the Dreamcast play DVDs, because if you don't know, a big contractor to the success of the Sony PlayStation 2 was that you could play DVDs. And that was a big selling point for a lot of people. Even the GameCube didn't do it as good as the PlayStation 2 because the PlayStation 2 could play DVDs. While the Dreamcast could play CDs, just about every console, again, but the GameCube could play CDs. And I feel like that was a problem even back then. Which it was a problem, because I still like DVDs, even though they say DVDs are on their way out, it's Blu-ray or digital download. I still prefer DVDs. I still like DVDs, and I feel like Sega should have released some type of peripheral, at least to say you had it in some form. If I'm being honest, I think Sega, and this is also going to lead into my next point, I think Sega should have, instead of including a modem with each system, included some type of DVD peripheral with each system. That would have, in my opinion, made the system a lot better value than what Sony was offering it too. But I mean, if you think about it, the Dreamcast was cheaper. Would have been cheaper. Would have had DVD support in some type of peripheral way, and still would already had a bigger head start, as it already had a bigger library of games. And if Sega would have followed both of my advice and had a more powerful Dreamcast also out at the time, with graphics on par to the PS2, well then let's be honest here. I feel like the Dreamcast would have had a huge fighting chance, and maybe even outsold the GameCube in that area, because the GameCube literally had no functionality at all but really playing games. But we're going to get into number 10, my final reason on how I think the Dreamcast could have succeeded, and that is online play. While Sega pushed online play, I think Sega should have pushed that as like a big marketing campaign. Like, I feel like that should have been one of the biggest strong points. While not a lot of households had internet at the time, the ones who did would have flocked to the Dreamcast for online play. Like, online play, everyone didn't know it at the time, and the Dreamcast was ahead of its time, being bundled with a modem, but online play was the future. And even and only literally not even a couple years later, the Xbox came along and proved that. Sega could have had a huge chance if they would have made a lot more games online focused and pushed online to the no ends. Like, if they would have pushed if they would have saw the Xbox, right, and would have pushed online to no end, I think they could have had a bigger chance than what they had in our timeline. But those are my thoughts on how the Dreamcast could have succeeded. I said I was gonna make this video a lot sooner, and how Sega Saturn could have succeeded. I never got around to it, but I got around to it now. So that's my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. And if you're new here, if you could please subscribe, like, share, comment, all that. Yeah, that would really make my day, and it'd be awesome. So thank you for enjoying this video. Like I said, let me know down in the comments how you think the Sega Dreamcast could have succeeded. And until next time, see ya, Slayers.